Berserk is one of my favorite animes and mangas of all time. The artwork, the storytelling style, and the immensely detailed and painful backstories and character development in the series have stuck with me and have haunted me on a daily basis. If you've read it or watched it, you know what I mean. Let's not even talk about it right now. Emotional stories like Berserk are what I've come to expect from anime and manga. But when I was younger, I never really questioned how anime and manga became an art form in a sense that just consistently explores super taboo topics and just creates stories that their only goal in life is to traumatize me. And I'm kind of here for it. That is until I came across an interview with Berserk's late creator, Kentaro Miura. In this interview, Miura stated that he was deeply inspired by shoujo manga, a genre of manga and comics made mostly for girls. He was super inspired by classics like The Rose of Versailles and a manga called The Song of the Wind and Trees. He loved their focus on human drama and sadness and stated he wanted to mix elements of shonen, manga mostly made for boys, with shoujo manga in Berserk. And what really stuck with him most about shoujo manga was how he focused on expressing emotions in such a powerful way without being as contrived as manga made for men. These are his words, not my own. Don't come for me in the comments. It's even said that Miura's art style, especially when he draws women, was influenced by shoujo manga. And I honestly really do see this. Like when you see how he draws Griffith or Casca, absolutely, I totally see the little shoujo touch in it. Look at Griffith. Hello? Hello? After learning this, I was so shocked to know that a manga, a super dark and masculine manga that's so beloved by so many male anime and manga lovers, would not exist without girls' comics. And when I purchased this book, A Drunken Dream, which contains 10 short stories by a manga veteran, Moto Hagio, and an interview with her, I realized that the shoujo genre would not be what it is without Moto Hagio really pushing boundaries and creating deeply controversial stories that publishers were too afraid to publish back in the day. I'm talking the 1960s, my guy. Between Hagio and all her female artist friends and colleagues, aka the Magnificent 49ers, the world of manga was taken by storm and changed forever because of this brave group of women. It's all thanks to Moto Hagio that we have characters like this in Berserk. You know what? I take it back. I'm rewording that. Without Moto Hagio to blame. We have Moto Hagio to blame. But her pioneering work in boys' love definitely inspired these scenes.
You can have whatever you want, my sword or my axe.
And for that, we salute you, Hagio. So, my dears, grab your drinky drinks and grab your snacky snacks and learn about a groundbreaking woman I've wanted to tell you guys about since I first started this channel. And I hope you'll really enjoy this video and maybe allow me to make a longer form video like this, maybe like once a month. Because as anime and manga lovers, especially ones like myself that make manga for a living, I think it's so important to understand the history and pay homage to the pioneers that really got this art form to where it is. Because oh my gosh, the more you learn, the more you appreciate what we have right now. So without further ado, let's get started. So before we learn about Moto Hagio and the Magnificent 49ers and their contribution to shoujo and their controversial stories, we have to learn about what the shoujo manga industry looked like before they got public. Since the early 1950s and the pre-hippie 1960s, the genre of Japanese girls comics, aka shoujo manga, was kind of not taken that seriously and was the kind of manga that you wrote if you were a man that couldn't get better work. The stories either had light humor, they were cute, but they were forgettable. sappy, super formulaic melodramas. So if you have someone that loves soap operas or novelas, you already know about the melodrama tropes, such as having the evil twin or having the rich people's baby get adopted by the poor people's baby and the poor people's baby getting raised by the rich people. Girl, we know about all the crazy tropes, and best believe Shoujo had it all, because they weren't taking the story seriously. They were writing for elementary school girls, and they were like, what do they know? They don't need quality. They're gonna grow out of it. Comics are for boys anyway. There were good artists creating good work, but the genre was still bound by extremely narrow notions of what girls' comics could or should be. In the 1960s, TV became super popular, and children's magazines said, nah, we will not lose to TV. And so these children's magazines began releasing magazines each week instead of every month. They included more pictures and more comics and all that good stuff. In doing so, they created the first generation of manga addicts who refused to give up their beloved comics. This triggered the comics boom of the 1960s. Publishers suddenly needed more manga artists to work in the many new magazines that were popping up. This was happening during a time when society was questioning what was the proper role of women in society. And women were realizing they actually had the ability to work in industries that were always thought of as male dominated, including the comics industry. So with all these societal changes and publishers actually needing more artists to work for their magazines, there's no surprise that there was a humongous cascade of women that were applying as manga artists for these magazines. But even though there were so many women creating manga, shoujo as a genre was still super formulaic. We were still dealing with the evil twins, stealing the babies, the mother having amnesia. Girl, they were not letting go of those tropes. What shoujo needed was a revolution, a change in expectations and the mindsets of publishers, editors, artists, and even the readers who just became used to the stories being the same old, same old. They needed someone to show them what was possible for female-targeted manga. And that revolution comes when Moto Hagio and the Magnificent 49ers joined the industry. Moto Hagio was born on May 12, 1949 in Omuta City in Fukuoka Prefecture in Japan. Omuta was like a mining town, so if your parents didn't own a little local shop, they most certainly worked for the coal mines. Moto Hagio's father actually worked at the pier where they loaded and shipped out coal and lumber. Hagio was the second of 4 children. She had a big sister, a little sister, and then the youngest was her brother. And she's a part of the baby boomer generation. So she describes her classes being super packed with kids. Every class had like 50 freaking kids. And every grade had 6 classes. That's 6 classes of 50 kids. These poor teachers were so overworked. Hagio always loved to draw, and she drew whenever she had a chance to. She'd draw on receipts, she'd draw on flyers, wrapping paper. Honestly, makes me think of myself as a little kid. My grandma had to actually hide her utility bills from me because I would draw on them. I drew on money too. I had no chill. So and as a young girl, she fell in love with manga. She would draw fan art of her favorite characters. She even drew her own little fan fiction comics. And when she began to write her own little stories, she then got herself a sketchbook so she can draw her little pages in secret because her parents were not supportive of her art. But we're going to get back to that in just a second. When asked what her stories were like at this age, like her little stories that she made up on her own, she said, well, they were definitely the product of the formulaic shoujo that was available at that time. So they weren't super taboo and adventurous like they will be in the future. I mean, she's only in elementary school. So she would often go to a little shop in her town where you were allowed to rent out books for 5 yen. She'd do chores, especially to earn a little extra money to go rent out these books. And then she had a relative who owned a bookstore, and she'd go there all the time to read the latest manga that would come out, but she was not allowed to actually buy any of the manga that she loved because her parents hated manga and comics. They thought they were a waste of time. They thought that they just got in the way of studying, and they were not supportive of her artwork at all. In middle school, she found a friend that also really loved manga as well, and her friend was like, girl, we should get together and make a manga. They did not have YouTube. They did not have any how to draw books. They had no online tutorials. They had no access to actual information. Then they came across a booklet called Osamu Tezuka's Cartoon College. Osamu Tezuka, you should know his name. He's the creator of Astro Boy. And this little pamphlet, I couldn't find too much information on it, but Hagio kind of describes it as a little pamphlet that just randomly came in her magazine where she read all her comics in. And in that little booklet, according to how she described it, it showed you have to use a ruler to make the lines of your panels. Her and her friend didn't know that. It showed them that they had to use India ink and dipping pens, and it just gave them those little basics to kind of get them started. Both of her parents believed, and still believe, that comics are nothing but a distraction from one's studies. And yes, you heard me right. They still feel this way, even though their daughter is like a groundbreaking and very successful author that won awards. And I have so much to say, but we're going to put a pin on that for a little bit later in the video. But their negative opinions of manga didn't stop her from reading what she loved, especially her favorite sci-fi creators like Osamu Tezuka, the grandfather of modern manga. I would love to do a video on him as well. Just you guys let me know in the comments. Would you like me to make a video in this style about him and his work? Let me know. Moto Hagio said about his work, "Everything by Tezuka blew me away when I was in elementary school. They were so imaginative, and I also would think, so this is how you make a story." It was because the stories were so carefully crafted that it was so easy for me to understand them. Moto Hagio stated that in her teens and 20s, she refused to read, quote, authors of realistic stories. She grew up during a socially and politically turbulent time and witnessed violent labor disputes and physical altercations amongst the adults of her mining town. It was a reality of violence and poverty, and I wanted to escape it. I wanted to move towards something more beautiful. But it seemed that it wasn't just what was happening in society that she was running away from. It seemed she was also running away from her home life, especially her parents. My father and mother, in an attempt to create the ideal family, disciplined us in various ways. Accepting us as we were was out of the question. The proper way to raise a family was to force the children into the form the parents desired. I accepted their discipline and forcing us into a mold as reality. But now I wonder if we were living in an illusion. If our parents saw the illusion of creating the perfect family as reality, would you call such a situation a self-contained domestic illusion? And I, in order to escape from this self-contained domestic illusion, fled to the worlds of sci-fi and fantasy manga. When Moto Hagio got older, she became a teenager, she was in high school, and like all of us in high school, we start looking for ourselves, and sometimes we look for ourselves in the media that we consume. And slowly but surely, she was definitely finding herself in the mangas that she loved. But after reading Tezuka's manga called Shinsengumi, she states, I became emotionally involved. I was surprised at myself. Then I realized for the first time that comics were capable of having such an impact on a reader. And I thought, if you can affect someone in this way, I want to take a stab at it myself. And inspired by European literature, sci-fi, and Osamu Tezuka, and the shoujo mangas from her childhood, she decided her calling was to be a mangaka. So in some of the shoujo manga magazines that she would read, every month there would be like a little ad from the publishers inviting new artists to submit their work and see if maybe they want to pick it up. Hagio became very serious about her manga making and began submitting her work for the next 2 years. So what she would do is she would secretly make manga at school. She'd go to her friend's house, she'd make manga there, she'd leave all of her artwork and supplies there. And then when she would mail her submissions to the publishers, she would use her friend's address so that all the mail from the publishers would go to the friend's house. She did not want her parents giving her a humongous lecture about how manga wasn't going to lead anywhere and so on and so forth. She states, when I remember my parents and comics, my only memories are of being scolded. And at some point during her time of submitting her stories to publishers, one of her stories actually won a competition from the magazine. And she actually got like a cash prize from the publishers via a check. She went, showed her mom the check, and her mom was shook. Mom was like, bro, I didn't know you could make money off of comics. And yeah, the mom went around to all the neighbors and bragged. But then when she came right back home, she told her, so by the way, you gotta quit that. You gotta give that up. That is childish, stupid, a waste of time. And honestly, that opinion that her mom had and the just lack of acceptance of what her daughter was capable of accomplishing and what her daughter was accomplishing really continues to this day. It's insane. So there was a time when Moto Hagio and her family moved to Osaka. When she was a senior in high school, she moved back to her hometown because she heard that there was a girl in her hometown that was making manga and was working, published, even though she was in high school. So she definitely wanted to speak to her. She was a girl named Makiko Hirata, and she told me that if I were interested, she would introduce me to her editor. And after I had drawn for a few stories, I went to Tokyo and Makiko Hirata took me to Kodansha. And that editor was like, yeah, go ahead, send me something. Send me like 20 or 25 pages by the end of the month. Girl, she had 15 days to do so. And she was like, he didn't promise me he was gonna publish me, but I told him I'd do it, so I gotta do it. This can be an opportunity. So I would send them story ideas that I wanted to do, and every idea was rejected. Every finished story I sent was rejected. So I thought, how am I going to eat? And there's a big gap between what I wanted to do and what they wanted me to do. And I thought, there's no way I can become a pro this way. I wondered if I should change my direction, but I want to draw what I want to draw. She began to wonder if maybe she should give up on her dreams of getting published. And she was in this really sad place for a couple of years, just submitting work and it getting rejected. But her stories weren't being rejected because she was a bad writer. It had nothing to do with her artwork. It had everything to do with what she was writing about. The topics were taboo, dark, emotional, psychological, and the publishers were not ready for that. She was definitely ahead of her time. And little did she know, those stories that were getting rejected over and over again were going to be the stories that make it big in the future. During this time of working on story after story and getting rejected, she had 10 stories that she was like, okay, one of these can definitely get picked up. She brought it to her editor, and when she got there, they actually had an opportunity for her that she was not expecting. The editor told me that Keiko Takemiya was held up trying to meet a deadline and asked if I would mind actually going out and helping her. I told the editor, yeah, I'm familiar with her work, and he said she's familiar with your work too. So I went and assisted her. Takemiya asked me if I was planning to move to Tokyo. I told her that my parents were worried about sending me off to the big city by myself, and that first I would have to convince them. I also told her I was having trouble selling my work and was worried that I wouldn't be able to make a living if I came to Tokyo. So, even though we were both there doing work for Kodansha, she said, I know an editor at Shogakukan. Would you like me to introduce you? And that editor was Junya Yamamoto. I want you to remember that name, okay? Junya Yamamoto. We're going to talk about him a little bit later when we talk about the magnificent 49ers. They're coming up. Moto Hagio brought a bunch of her stories. She brought them over to Takemiya's apartment and asked her, can you please show these to the editor that you told me about? And she did. And Junya Yamamoto, the editor, he saw the work that Moto Hagio had submitted and was like, girl, I see the potential. I see the skill. I'm gonna give you a chance. He loved them. He wanted to buy them all on the spot, girl. See, this is what I'm talking about. There's space for all of us in the industry. No gatekeeping. She helped her girl out. Hagio's only thought when he said he wanted to buy her stories was, good, I get to eat. She was so worried about making ends meet. And then Takemiya, the girl who Moto Hagio was helping out with her deadlines, the girl that also introduced Hagio to that editor, Junya, who absolutely loved her stories. Now she's calling Hagio and be like, girl, I'm thinking of moving. You want to come with? This was Hagio's chance to get away from her parents and actually move out to the city. And then she asked her parents and they were like, yeah, sure, go. We're sure you'll be back in a year. Here's 10,000 yen. Good luck. So Takemiya and Moto Hagio moved in together in Ozumi, Japan. And girl, their apartment was bumping. It became known as the Ozumi Salon. Girl, this is where the magnificent 49ers, all the revolution happened in this apartment. They were incubated in the radical youth culture of the 1960s and inspired not only by the best work of older girls comic artists, but also by European cinema and literature, not to mention American and British rock and roll. A number of talented, innovative young female artists made their debut at more or less the same time, and all these people hung out at this freaking apartment. Girl, people were coming in and out. People that were just in the industry, artists, everybody was coming, just here, just drawing, spreading ideas. Mind you, they got fan art. Hagio got fan art from some random girl. And they said, girl, come over, let's draw together. Girl, just a girl sent in fan art. And then she was like, yeah, you could be our assistant. And she's there working with professionals, working with Moto Hagio, the person she wrote a fan letter to. And who was this girl? Shio Sato, another person that debuted around this time later on, who also became like a really good shoujo artist. Just about anyone who hung out in the apartment shared by Hagio and Takemiya from 1970 to 1972, even women who were not cartoonists, but most will agree that the Magnificent 49ers are all those artists who revolutionized girls and shoujo comics back in the 1970s. Junya Yamamoto, the editor that gave Moto Hagio a chance. He is the invisible member of the Magnificent 49ers because it was he who brought so much of their work to the light of day. What any other editor of the day would have seen as flaws in these young artists, Yamamoto saw as enormous potential. In the face of pressure from above, he published one unconventional story after another unconventional story after another, for no other reason except that he thought the stories were interesting and the girls were talented. Moto Hagio and all the members of the Magnificent 49ers all experienced a lot of misogyny because, again, manga and comics have always been a male-dominated industry, and they got so much heat from a lot of the guys putting down their artwork, a lot of the, executives really putting them down. But according to Moto Hagio, she was like, what do those old farts know? And also, anything negative that they have to say to me is way less traumatizing than what my parents have said to me to my face. Girl. Now, Moto Hagio is known for a lot of the taboo subjects and subjects that really did not exist in shoujo at that time. And even though Moto Hagio is known for writing about homosexual love, taboo subjects, having androgynous characters and all that good stuff, she was not really that aware about homosexuality at all. But her roommate, Takemiya, for sure was. Takemiya is the reason why we have The Heart of Thomas and every other BL love story that Moto Hagio has written. Takemiya is a real one, okay? She helped her get published. She gave her a place to live in the city. She introduced her to gay love magazines and movies. Takemiya is a real one. She is the GOAT. One day they invited me to go see, I'm not pronouncing that, known in English as The Special Friendship. And it's a love story set in a boys' boarding school. I thought it was so beautiful. I'm a sucker for anything beautiful. But this movie she saw in theaters with Takemiya, and she said that it was so incredibly moving and it really impacted her. And as soon as she got home, she started creating the story of The Heart of Thomas. Oh my gosh. I read that story before I even knew who Moto Hagio truly was. I am telling you right now, I wept. I cried so freaking hard. And there's a song I listened to during the last couple of chapters of that story. Girl, don't even get me started. Ah! I can't even listen to that song anymore because I start crying. I start thinking about The Heart of Thomas. If you ever get a chance to read the book, A Drunken Dream by Moto Hagio, all the stories are short stories, and they're all printed in the order in which they were published. So you can actually see the evolution of her storytelling style, and you can see the evolution of, I have to write these because my publishers won't let me do anything weird and strange and taboo. And then we get through the story and go, my publishers are letting me do all the taboo things. And she went rogue. Like this story here about conjoined twins. One is very, very ill, but she's the only one that really has her mind intact and is the only one with mobility, while her sister, who looks beautiful, is absent-minded and incapable of walking and is the favorite of the two twins. The sickly twin is honestly so burdened by the fact that she actually has to act as her beautiful conjoined sister's arms, legs, mind. She has to clean her, has to feed her, and then one day they get terribly sick. And the doctor tells them, you can only survive if we operate you guys and separate you. That's when the sick twin learns she's the only one with working organs, and her beautiful sister is actually sapping all the nutrition from her body. And if they were to be separated, her beautiful sister will pass away. I don't want to spoil this story for you. It's a short story. You'll read it literally in a few minutes. But the ending was really, it was so touching and so painful. Seeing someone that just as much as they despised their sister, hated their sister, felt burdened by them, she also truly, truly loved her sister. And I think you should definitely read it. Under the Willow Tree. Bro, I'm not even going to tell you jack about this. I just want you to go read it somehow. There is no dialogue until you hit the last 2 pages. Pay attention to all the little details. Oh my gosh, I'm getting chills on my legs thinking about this story. When I hit the ending, I cried. I just reread it 2 days ago for this video, cried again, like if I had never read it before. Her work is so beautiful, super, super strange, so taboo in many ways, especially when you think about the era in which her stories came out. And truly, truly, once you read her work and then you see the stories that came out in the years and decades after she got published, that's when you really get to recognize just how much she actually influenced the industry. And you can really appreciate the work that she did by just not giving up and having the courage to keep pushing and writing whatever the freak she wanted. Moto Hagio is a member of the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of Japan and the Japan Cartoonists Association. Her major works include AA, The Poe Clan, They Were 11, The Heart of Thomas, Hanshin Half God, Iguana Girl, Marginal, and Mesh. In 1976, she received the 21st Shogakukan Manga Award for The Poe Clan and They Were 11. In 1997, she became the first recipient of the Osamu Tezuka Culture Award Grand Prize for A Cruel God Reigns. And in 2006, she was awarded the 27th Japan SF Grand Prize for Otherworld Barbara. She was also awarded the Japanese Medal of Honor with the purple ribbon, highlighting her cultural impact on Japan. I would think that after all of this success and all of these years later, with her mother being in her 70s and her dad being in their 80s, that they would finally accept all the hard work and accomplishments that Moto Hagio, has accomplished. You'd be wrong. To this day, her parents are not supportive of her work. They don't take it seriously, and they still think she should be using her time doing something else, something more substantial. She's seen my work, but she seems incapable of comprehending the notion of cartooning as a profession. She's come with me to the editorial offices. She's been to the end of the year parties with me. She's seen my books. She's even seen me working, but she just doesn't seem to get it. And until I was about 30 years old, she constantly told me to stop doing such work. And the reason she stopped nagging me was because we had a huge fight about it. In the minds of my mother and father, cartooning was the most pathetic and sleazy sort of work. To this day, Moto Hagio is still working, and she's actually a judge for a lot of manga competitions, and so she's seeing all the new generation of mangakas and creators coming in, and her work will forever be a part of history. She will always be someone that we can all look at and be like, girl, because of you and the Magnificent 49ers, manga is what it is today. And I really hope that we can continue to appreciate her work. I hope you guys will check out her stories. Of course, some of you might feel they are dated. But I think that reading her work, you can really appreciate where manga has come from. And honestly, her stories still freaking give. They slap. Okay, I don't care. I love the style. I love her storytelling style. And knowing that without her work, we would not have what we have today, you got to give it up to her. And I hope that you guys will try out her stories. And I hope that her story is something inspiring to all of you to not give up on your dreams, that you have to be your own cheerleader. You got to just seek out what it is that you want to accomplish, because you really do not know what you can accomplish. And if she would have listened to all the negativity, girl, we wouldn't have Berserk. Don't you want this scene in Berserk? Don't you want that? Don't you want that scene? And honestly, she will forever be one of my favorite mangaka, and I will recommend her every chance I get. Well, that's it, guys. I hope you really enjoyed this video. If you really enjoyed this video, please let me know down there in the comments below. If you got this far in the video, please leave me a little book emoji with a little heart, just to let me know that you got this far. Please don't forget to give me a big thumbs up and subscribe and hit the notification bell. And please let me know if you want to see more videos like this. And if you have any art-related topics or manga-related topics that you would like me to cover, please let me know down there in the comments below. And don't forget to follow me on Instagram, because I literally post there every single day. So, my dears, please take care, God bless, and do not be afraid to nerd out. Take care, guys!